got lotion in my eye this morning, and rubbing lotion on my face, and my hands are usually what's really dry, but my face has been really dry lately, so I've been putting lotion on my face, and I'm a guy, so I'm not used to putting lotion on my face, and I don't really know how to do it, so I just kind of spread it around my face like this, and that's not like the best method.
Sure.
As I drape lotion into my eyes, and
right.
So my eyes have been burning all morning, and you'll probably see me like wink at you for several different reasons.
More than usual?
Yeah. And also cry. I'll probably shed some tears during this podcast, and we talked about me,
Well, you're you're a sensitive guy.
I am an emotional guy. Like
yeah.
I pretty much cry every night over my girls. So it's one of those things. But right now I'm not thinking about them, so I shouldn't be crying. But
you should be.
I also will probably just this lotion and burns.
Well, we can play it off as it's the lotion. Now the question that's the question that it begs anytime we talk about the lotion.
Is it in the basket?
Is it in the basket? It is in the basket.
Yeah. Good to know.
Good to know.
Let's get on.
I just don't want to get the hose again. That's
rinse me off. Hello and welcome back to the Nerd Rundown podcast, where we cover the latest in the nerd world of movies, TV, comics, games, and more. We appreciate you joining us today, and if you want to follow us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at the Nerd Rundown, find us on our YouTube channel at the Nerd Rundown, and you can listen to our podcast on places like Spotify, Google, Apple, Player FM, Amazon, Deezer, Buzzsprout, soon to be Pandora. And please like and subscribe on all of those if you're enjoying this podcast. So welcome to episode 4, A New Hope for Podcasts. You like that, Eric?
I do.
Oh, yeah, I knew you would. And so we have an awesome show for you today where we're going to cover topics like House of the Dragon TV show, rundowns on new trailers released, DC Fandome announced, some Green Lantern news, and we have a special segment for you I'm really excited about. And then we get to some great fan questions. But first, the rundown.
The rundown.
Rundown. First, the montage.
Everybody loves a montage.
Montage! Okay, so I don't know if that will ever get old, by the way.
I hope not.
I hope not. So first on our rundown, we have big news. This week, it was announced that the new Game of Thrones prequel show, and I say prequel lightly. I use that term lightly. It's a prequel show to Game of Thrones. It's called House of the Dragon. We may have mentioned it. Like I said, I don't remember if we talked about it in our practice session, which nobody ever heard,
right,
or if it's during our real stuff. But
we, whether or not you were listening or not,
you and I,
right, you and I have
talked about it
right.
a little bit. But this will also be the most I've talked about Game of Thrones in 2 years, so I'm a little nervous. I might break down and cry. But it's the lotion. Remember?
It is the lotion. But I think the therapy and the medication have really helped you get past that last season of Game of Thrones. The trauma that it's inflicted on you. So
I haven't talked about it, so I'm hoping the therapy worked, but we'll see.
Right.
So the show House of the Dragon is based on George R. Martin's Fire and Blood, which is a book released in 2018, an offshoot book of this series of Ice and Fire. See, I'm even trying to remember George R. Martin's book.
Did he actually write it, do you think, or was it a ghostwriter?
Well, it's questionable.
Sure.
If he's even writing these books.
Yeah. Go on. I don't want to
it's
detour there.
That's a PTSD moment
right.
all in itself. House of the Dragon chronicles the rise and downfall of the Targaryens, who are the only family of the Dragon Lords to survive the doom of Valyria, which, if you remember in Season 5 of Game of Thrones, Tyrion was making his way to Daenerys over in Essos, and it was like a burned down city, a big.
Is that when he sees the dragon for the first time?
When he sees the dragon
and
up above.
They're
the
on
clouds.
that river.
They're on that scary river and the stone face.
He's with Jorah
Mormont.
Jorah. Yep, he's with Jorah.
Jorah brings Tyrion.
And it was like that burned out city and like it looked like a bombed out city.
You can compare it to Pompeii. Yeah,
okay.
And so they were the only dragon lords of Valyria, old Valyria, that survived, and so they, Aegon then brought his dragons over to Westeros, across the Great Sea, and conquered the Seven Kingdoms, and then they ruled, they ruled Westeros for a really long time. I think about 1,000 years. So they're a family that's got a lot of history, a lot of backstory to explore. This picks up about 300 years prior to Game of Thrones.
Okay.
And it's going to cover the Targaryen Civil War.
Okay.
And what happens in that is King Viserys, which I know a lot of people struggled with names at the previous Game of Thrones show.
Right.
This is going to be worse because it's like looking at an elementary class down in Nashville, Tennessee. It's like Hayden, Braden, Chaden, Caden, Saden, Layden, Baden, blah 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 blah.
Right.
It's
every name sounds the same, but a little different.
Yeah, it's like a vowel different or something. So you have King Viserys. And Viserys may sound familiar to you because that is the name of Daenerys' older brother, who was a jerk and thought he was the heir to the Iron Throne. And
he got his due.
He got his due. He got his golden crown early in season 1. So it's not the same person. So don't be confused by that. He's played by Paddy Considine. Pretty good actor. He's actually been in a lot lately. Most recent thing I can remember him in is The Outsider with Ben Mendelsohn, where it was that Stephen King story. Did you watch that?
I didn't.
It's really good. Really scary. But Ben Mendelsohn was in it, and Paddy Considine got overtaken by like a demon, and it's pretty good.
Cool.
So he's King Viserys. He has a daughter. His name is Rhaenyra Targaryen.
Sure it is.
Exactly. And she's played by Emma Darcy. So he couldn't have a son, and so he finally had a son, or he had a daughter, and he named her the heir to the Iron Throne. And, of course, as soon as he does that, he has a son. And so then everybody's up in arms like, oh, you have a son. He should be heir to the Iron Throne because misogyny. But King Viserys is like, nah, I'm gonna stick with
the daughter.
The daughter.
Interesting. Okay.
So of course, like every downfall of any empire in the world ever in history,
right,
to include Game of Thrones history, the line of succession is really the impetus for war and what brings the downfall,
right,
or at least starts the downfall, because the downfall doesn't really end until right before the Game of Thrones show. About 20 years before the Game of Thrones show, when Robert's Rebellion happens. But I digress.
Right.
Anyway, really excited for the show, because when Game of Thrones is at its best, it's at its best. Like, it's the best.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping it can get back to, season 1 through 6, 1 through 7. 7, has its faults more so than the other seasons, but it's still better than 8. Do
you think we'll get a lot of season 1 porno with a plot, or will it be more plot than porno? So I just curious.
Great question.
Thank you.
I'm really glad you asked, because they have come out and said this show will have adult themes. It will not have the violence towards women. That's going to be cut down.
Well, yeah, I mean, I struggled with that even.
Who wouldn't struggle with it?
Yeah,
I mean obviously there's some creeps out there who
right.
liking it, but Any decent person with a heart would struggle with it.
Yeah.
And so they came out and said that's going to be cut down, hopefully to 0, because you don't really need that in the show. It doesn't add anything to the show.
Yeah,
there's other ways of showing.
Yeah, and if you need that type of thing to happen to a person, you could just allude to it. You don't necessarily have to
That's a good
be graphic about it and show it, because it's like okay, I don't want to watch this part.
Yeah,
like
now
maybe I'm just naive. I mean, I'm not naive in that I know that it doesn't happen in like real life.
Right,
but I don't need a TV show that's gonna
There's just so many other ways to do it.
Right,
and so we're probably gonna see some naked women. You may even see some naked dudes.
Well, at this point, yeah, you do see dong now.
Yeah, that's all over.
Yep.
It doesn't matter.
Yep.
Representation for all.
Right. It's equal.
So
equality.
A couple other cast notes. Reese.
I think it's Reese.
I think it's Reese.
Yes.
Reese Ifans is Otto Hightower's Hand of the King. You may know Reese from a lot of things.
Yes.
He was in the first Amazing Spider-Man. He became the Lizard. He was in I keep wanting to say Monty Python. It's not Monty Python. It's what's that show? Here, I'll look it up.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this,
yes.
Eric. What's your hype level for this? When I look this up,
definitely up to like 9. 9 or 10 for sure. So I can only think of Reese from The Replacements. He played the kicker.
Yeah, he's the kicker
in the Keanu Reeves and
that was
the
a good one.
the Keanu Reeves movie, The Replacements, about the football guys, and he was the kicker in it. So I really can't see him as anybody but a cigarette smoking.
I same thing. I see him as the kicker. He's so good in that movie.
He really is, and I'm interested to see how he does, in this one. So I think I'm super jazzed for this one. I really enjoy the Game of Thrones stuff. I don't think I was quite as disappointed in the final season as you were. I enjoyed it.
Nobody really was.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. There was definitely opportunities there, but I think kind of looking at the cast that we have on this, I think this is going to be very similar. In the original series, we had really only one big star in that first season, and then everybody else was pretty much just really great character actors, and we got to see and really kind of birthed a lot of really cool people that we're going to see, I think, and over time. So I'm hoping this series does the same thing, where they are going to cast really great character actors, and we're going to get to see some really cool stuff. So I think
we will.
Yeah.
Speaking of really cool stuff we'll get to see, so this show is going to start off with dragons, fully grown dragons.
Right.
So that's a big selling point of the show, is we're not going to see the baby dragons grow into, by season 6, 7, they're fully grown. No, these bastards will be huge right off the bat. And there's going to be 6 or 7 of them. So that's a big selling point.
Yeah.
And this show is already at season 8 of Game of Thrones budget, which is in the, 15 to 20 million range, maybe even
per episode or per season.
Sorry. Let me back that. It's about 10 million per episode.
Okay.
So
about 100 million for a season.
Yeah. Not bad.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, that's not Amazon Prime money, but
it's not Lord
of the Rings.
Not Lord of the Rings. And what I'm really excited about this is the way it should be. It should be Lord of the Rings versus Game of Thrones. So these two shows will air around the same time.
For sure.
I don't think they'll air at the same time, because that would be bad.
Right. Well, I mean, it's streaming, so it's not like you're fighting over time slots like you used to, where hey, ABC won
especially if Prime does like release Friday night.
Right. Yeah. So I don't think point. I don't know that you'll see that, but it's like,
won't be Sunday night versus Sunday night.
Right, exactly. So we'll see. I mean, I hope for both for our sake that they do spread them out so that we can kind of digest them and consume them separately. But we'll see what happens. But I'm stoked.
Yeah, I'm very, very stoked, because again, when Game of Thrones is at its best, it's the best, and
for sure.
And there's no denying that. And I want to get over my Game of Thrones PTSD at some point in my life.
I think it would be beneficial for everybody involved.
Yes. Okay, so definitely excited for that. Next,
Yes.
next it was on the rundown it was a quiet week in news.
Right.
However, it was a busy week for trailers.
Yes.
And
Sort of.
yeah, as you'll see.
Teasers.
Here.
It was more of
it was a busy
big
week for teasers.
Teasers, yes.
First trailer, I like to just, as I drop my mouse, I'm sorry, people, that was probably loud, but the first trailer that was released, well, it wasn't the first, it was just really, the first one we're going to talk about is the new Disney Pixar movie, Luca.
Luca, yes.
And, growing up in an Italian family, very, very excited about this.
I bet.
So
bet.
It's going to cover all the Italian tropes like, gelato and pasta and endless scooter rides.
Yes.
And it's a coming of age story of an Italian
boy.
boy.
Every Italian stereotype right
He's
there.
He's going to get his first hair down there.
Oh, man.
No,
I don't.
That might be a little
Is that Pixar? This is not DreamWorks. I think that would be more DreamWorks.
That's right.
So.
Yeah, it's a little less grown up.
Right.
So a little less coming of age story. But excited because Pixar, has Pixar released a movie that's been like, that sucked?
No, I don't think so. I
Yeah.
don't think I've ever gone through. I know other people.
I wasn't psyched about Soul. I don't think that was in the upper echelon. I don't think that some of their sequels have been as good.
Yeah.
Like Toy Story 4 was not good in my mind.
It was okay.
I mean, it wasn't bad, I should
No.
say.
But
Nothing's
Toy
been
Story,
below the terrible line.
Toy Story 1, 2, and 3 were so great that.
Yeah.
I mean, you're bound to have a letdown, or just something that just doesn't quite measure to the other ones.
Yeah.
Like if you looked at Toy Story 4 as like an origin story, and that's how you wanted to, like if you'd never seen any of the Toy Stories, you would have thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is a really great story. But because it comes on the heels of 1, 2, and 3, and 3 was really great.
3 was great.
3 was really good.
And 4 really focused on more Woody than the other toys. And I love Woody, but anyway.
Yeah.
Let's cut that last sentence out.
Yeah.
So Luca is set to release later this year. It will not be on the Premier Access on Disney Plus, so it's just going to be when it's released. You don't have to pay the $29.99 for it.
Yeah.
So that's nice.
Well, hopefully Pixar will continue its streak of being able to make me cry in movies.
Yeah.
Although Soul did, I did not choke up on that one. Onward makes me cry every time, but that's for.
I actually haven't seen Onward yet.
You should watch it. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I really want to because obviously Chris Pratt and Tom Holland.
Yeah.
But Pixar knows how to make the waterworks.
Yes.
Next on the trailer rundown, we have an American classic story being retold that's being directed by maybe the greatest director of all time in Steven Spielberg.
Yep.
Coming to America. Little snap in the fingers.
Yep.
West Side Story.
West Side Story.
And watching the trailer for this, it looks like they are putting in a lot of effort to make it look like the original.
Well, which would be cool.
Yeah, so that's cool.
I think that's what people like. They want to be familiar, but you can change some stuff, but they want it to be familiar.
I mean, at first I was like, are they showing scenes from the original? It was really crazy. So pretty cool. Excited for that. We don't have much information on it. I mean, you know about West Side Story, you know the story, but really cool anecdote on that is my drama teacher in high school was in the original West Side Story. So
very nice.
Shout out to Bud Simmons.
Way to go, Bud.
Yeah. Next. So I watched this and I thought it was going to be a full-on trailer.
Yeah.
So after 30 seconds it was over, I was like, what the hell was that?
Oh, right. Yes.
So The Tomorrow War starring Chris Pratt.
Yes.
And that's all I had to say. It was like, what is this?
Yeah, check it out. I mean, if you've got some time, look it up. I'm hoping this is one of those situations where the movie far outstrips the trailer, because there's a lot of times you'll watch a trailer and you'll be like, oh my gosh, that looks amazing. Then you get into the movie and you're like, okay, all the best parts were actually in that 2-minute trailer.
The Hobbit was a...
Right. The Hobbit.
The Hobbit had an amazing trailer.
Yes.
Did not live up to the... Anyway.
Did not live up to it.
That's an inside story.
Yeah.
joke.
Well, you know what?
We'll give you some
There's
context around that later.
Yeah, maybe a little bit later. So,
but what you know more about the story a little bit than I do on the Tomorrow War with Chris Pratt.
Yeah, so the basic premise of the story is that he plays a school teacher of some sort.
Nice. Savior of the day.
Yes,
as they do.
As they do. Yep. So he plays some sort of like school teacher or something that maybe he's a former combat vet. I'm not sure. They don't say anything about it in the synopsis, and they don't allude to anything in the trailer. I just have picked this up by reading different places. But he plays a school teacher. Apparently, these people appear from the future. Human beings appear from the future, and they say that basically 50 years from now, the Earth is being invaded by an alien species of some sort or another, and we are losing the war. Human beings are losing the war.
So we have 50 years to prepare.
We have 50 years. Not only do we have 50 years to prepare, but we need to recruit people from the past and bring them into the future because we are really losing this war. So they are bringing people from the past into the future.
So they bring Chris Pratt.
So they bring Chris Pratt.
They're like, get an English professor.
Right.
Or an English teacher. We definitely need that.
Right.
That's on the checklist to save the day.
Right, because he's expendable when you're or he's probably a phys ed teacher because those guys are pretty, those are
he's wearing the booty shorts.
We could throw anybody, the little bike shorts. So you climb that rope.
yeah.
Although they probably don't make kids climb the rope anymore, but
unfortunately.
So anyhow, so that's the Tomorrow War. It looks like they're pulling people from the past into the future to fight this war, and so
it's an interesting concept. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah,
it's Chris Pratt. It's on Amazon Prime.
Right. Yep.
Which is a good segue to the next trailer that was released for a movie that was actually released this weekend, starring Michael B. Jordan.
Yes.
Again, you're more of the expert on this one. Why don't you give a little rundown on it?
Sure. So Without Remorse is an extension of the Jack Ryan, Tom Clancy.
Hell yeah.
So Tom Clancy, famous author from the 80s, he created a character, Jack Ryan, that everybody has
Patriot
seen.
Games, Clear and Present Danger, Harrison Ford, Alec Baldwin.
Hunt for Red October, all those. So really great. So
a little Ben Affleck movie.
So yeah, right. So who has been played by Alec Baldwin? Jack Ryan's been played by Alec Baldwin, by Harrison Ford, and then Ben Affleck, and then Chris Pine, and then now John Krasinski.
The man himself,
yes.
John Krasinski.
So he's been played by a lot of different characters, but he is more of although they've tried to make him more of an action star, the Jack Ryan character in the books.
He was just like an analyst.
Right, he's a CIA analyst, and so he's more involved in the political. So a CIA analyst would be, let's say, for instance, you have a person who you are wanting to study.
Terrorists.
Like the Soviet Union back in the day when you had the Soviet Union, you had a guy that was the Moscow. Yeah, so you would assign a person to collect intelligence or gather intelligence from various sources. So radar data, signals intelligence. So you're capturing radio, TV, stuff like that. And then they would mine through that data or satellite information. They would mine through that data, and then they would come up with briefings and say, "Hey, based on what I'm seeing in these pictures, I see troop movements over here and over there." And
they would do one of my favorite words. They would surmise.
Surmise, yes. So that's the Jack Ryan character. He does that. So he's more of a political.
They've turned him more into a field agent recently.
Right, and they've tried to move him into more of a field agent to make it more exciting. But John Clark, who is
Michael B. Jordan,
who is going to be played by Michael B. Jordan,
of Killmonger fame and Creed fame and Friday Night Lights fame.
Yes, so he actually has been played in a couple of other movies with
Liev Schreiber and
Sum
of All Fears with Ben Affleck.
Correct, and then he was also played by William Dafoe in Clear and Present Danger.
Yep.
So
of Green Goblin fame.
Correct. so he is, which again we'll be talking about a little bit later. So he yes. So the John Clark is a CIA operative.
He's the field agent.
He is the field agent. He is the action star. So he's almost the yin to Jack Ryan's yang. So John Clark is a former Navy SEAL. And then exactly. So as soon as you say that, you know that he's a door kicker and just an all around badass.
Yep.
So when you're a team guy, everybody knows that you're a badass. So anyhow, so the John Clark, this Without Remorse, is basically the origin story of how he gets to where he is, and then this will lead into a sequel, which I am
very excited about if they do what I'm hoping they do, which is they start to tell the Rainbow Six story, which is John Clark then begins this counterterrorism organization called Rainbow Six, where he takes the best of everybody's special forces. So from the Germans, So he takes the best from the SAS, from the Germans, from I was going to say Italians. But whoa.
Yeah. So for the U.S. people, all right, come on. But he takes the best special forces guys from all these different NATO
Rainbow
groups,
16.
and then they are then tasked with the most difficult counterterrorism things.
But that's for the sequel.
That's for the sequel.
We'll get there someday.
I'm hoping that we get to that. So yeah.
And it's in the Amazon Prime. It's on Amazon Prime. It's now released on Amazon Prime.
Right. Which I'm hoping means that we get a Jack Ryan, John Clark. Because I'd love to see Krasinski. Yes, I'd love to see Krasinski and Michael B. Jordan work together. Yes, I think that would be absolutely delightful if we could do that.
That'd be awesome. Looking forward to it. Watch it. It's on Amazon Prime.
Yep.
And then finally on the trailer rundown, we had a quick little teaser of a show returning from infamy, Dexter Season 9.
Yes.
So quick rundown on Dexter. Dexter ran for 8 seasons on Showtime. Back in the day, I always say that the first 4 seasons of Dexter are some of the best TV out there, and I'd put it up. Those 4 seasons I'd put up against other 4 seasons of a show, almost any show, and it was phenomenal. And then after season 4, the next 4 seasons were at the other end of the spectrum, and it was terrible. And everybody who's seen the finale knows that the finale is maybe one of the worst finales of all time.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that this show returning brings it back to relevance and brings it back in a good way. Yeah. And in the teaser, we see it's a quick shot of Dexter looking out the window, and you can see in the reflection there's a body like wrapped up in
the cellophane.
The cellophane.
Yes.
I was like, what is that? Foil? No.
Yeah.
So he's wrapped up in cellophane. He's moving around, and you can see just that little Dexter grin that he gives.
Yep.
And
so that's cool.
At the end of, spoiler alert for the end of the worst finale ever, Dexter moves himself from Miami to what looks like maybe Washington in the woods, and he's like a lumberjack all of a sudden. Anyway, he's back. Looks like he's back to his old ways, his old serial killer of serial killers.
Yes.
So, excited for it. Again, it's kind of like Game of Thrones.
Well, it can't get any worse. You know, can't get any worse than season 8. So maybe it can.
It's only going up from here.
I tell my teenager all the time, hey, when you've hit rock bottom, the first thing you should do is stop digging. You know, so maybe.
I mean, I 1,000% relate to what you just said.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that that's the case with this show, because when it's like Game of Thrones, when it's at its best, it's
really good. Yeah, Michael C. Hall is really good. He's chilling.
Yeah, so good. And so that brings us to the next rundown. So last year in August, DC Comics, DC Studios, whatever, run by Warner Brothers, they had the DC Fandome, and we got our first looks at movies such as The Batman starring Robert Pattinson and Zack Snyder? Zack Snyder's Justice League reboot. So it was exciting. We got some really good trailers out of it. And so they've announced that the new DC Fandome is going to take place again this year. I don't think we have a release date, but it happened in August last year, so I presume that it would be this year in August as well. And
right.
Hopefully we get, looks at movies that are in production right now, like The Flash, Black Adam, Shazam. We talked about those movies last week.
Right.
And maybe even a better look at The Batman that's coming out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we'll see.
Exciting. And, that brings us to our next rundown. It's a good segue, is The Green Lantern series has made their first big casting of their show that's going to premiere on HBO Max.
Yes.
So hopefully we even get some looks at what's going to happen with this TV show
I hope so,
at
yeah.
DC Fandome. And we talked a little bit about this last week, so it was
it was one of our fan questions was what series would you like to see redone? And so and this was actually one of the things that I was looking forward to. So this is super great news for me at least, and I think for big everybody, because I think the Green Lantern is a super cool superhero that again, you can take a normal person and have them put the ring on. Like they have no superpowers other than they put the ring on and then all of a sudden they do. So
this is why the ring is one of the greatest weapons in any medium.
Yes.
Because, first of all, the ring chooses you.
Right.
So if you get chosen by the ring, you have the power of the Green Lantern Corps, which the ring will create anything that you can imagine. So it's only limited by your imagination, which is so cool.
Talk about a great MacGuffin. Good Lord, that's like one of the best.
I know some people that would probably just create they'd create dicks, and that's all that their imagination could create. But if I had that ring, I would definitely be an awesome hero.
Oh yeah,
because my imagination runs wild.
It's pretty cool, and I think that's just a little commentary on movies in general. I think there's a lot of stuff where you look at things and you think, oh man, and I think they did a great job with it. Just to kind of run a quick tangent real fast here. Talking about John Krasinski and Emily Blunt's A Quiet Place. They did a great job of not showing, using your imagination against you in that stuff.
That's a great point.
So I think letting people use their imagination for horror and for suspense and stuff is always super great. I think they always do a really good job of that.
Yep.
So this kind of goes in the other direction where you need to use it for whatever power you want to. But the imagination, for some people, I'm not all that imaginative. I'm pretty boring, but
I'd agree.
But yeah, which is why the ring.
That's why I chose you as my co-host.
Yeah, right. Thanks. I appreciate it.
No, I love the Green Lantern series because of that. I think that it's got a litany of heroes in it. So getting back to this rundown, they cast Guy Gardner.
Yes.
So
Finn Wittrock.
Here's the announcement. It says HBO Max has announced one of their major roles has been cast in their 10 episodes. So good to know it's going to be 10 episodes. Mm-hmm. Maybe one of the small drawbacks of Falcon and Winter Soldier was it was only 6 episodes.
Yeah, that was.
So casting their 10-episode Green Lantern series, the show's official synopsis reads, Green Lantern reinvents the classic DC property through a story spanning decades and galaxies. So cool. Beginning on Earth in 1941 with the very first Green Lantern, Alan Scott, and 1984 with cocky alpha male Guy Gardner and half-alien Bree Jarda. They'll be joined by a multitude of other Lanterns, and it's Finn Wittrock will be playing Guy Gardner. Right. So I don't know much about Finn.
He was big in American Horror Story.
Oh, right.
So for some folks who've watched that,
watched that.
Yeah, they may know who that is. I'm not much of a horror person. So,
but I'm excited to see the litany of Green Lantern characters. Yeah. You got guys like Hal Jordan, who has appeared already in his own movie with Ryan Reynolds, and if you know Ryan Reynolds, he doesn't want that movie even talked about.
Right.
But we may see our first Jon Stewart. We actually should have gotten a Jon Stewart in Zack Snyder's Justice League, which that got cut out.
Yeah.
So Jon Stewart he's the first African American Green Lantern.
Oh, okay.
So he's big. He's a big guy there. I'd love to see something like Idris Elba play him.
Yeah. Idris Elba would be great. So.
But. Very excited for Green Lantern.
Yeah.
So that's the rundown. Short rundown, but fun stuff in there. Looking forward to House of the Dragon. Looking forward to some of these shows that got released with trailers. DC Fandome. Hopefully I'm bring some good trailers.
I'm hoping DC turns the corner. I really am. Yeah. I think they've got some good projects lined up. So hopefully they turn the corner. Now, putting it all together, that's a whole other thing. They've got a lot of good.
They've had it lined up before. Yeah, for sure. So
they've got a lot of good pieces here, but I don't know if they can pull it together. We'll see.
Cool. So we're gonna move to our next segment, which is I'm very excited about. I have a list here that we're gonna go through.
All right.
So the list is called Top 100 Action Movies.
Okay.
due to time constraints, we won't go through all 100 of them. We're going to go through the top 10 and talk about some honorable mentions.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So it's top action movies of the 90s. And anybody who knows Eric and I knows we love our 90s action flicks.
We do.
I always like comparing, the decades of action movies. You have the 80s with your Die Hard and your Commando and Predator and
Running Man.
And it's kind of a little over the top action, and then you get into the 90s when the budget started soaring and you get bigger action, and I feel like
and the pecs got bigger.
As they should.
Well, yeah, because the pecs in First Blood were all right, but then in Rambo First Blood Part 2, the pecs were twice the size, and then Arnold just
changed the game.
Oh my gosh. His pecs were massive pecs. Yep.
Come to the Nerd Rundown to learn about men's pecs in action movies.
And dongs.
And Green Lantern dongs. So, number 10 on this list, and we've talked about this movie so many times, we love it.
Yes.
So, the number 10 action movie of the 90s, according to this list, True Lies. This belongs in the top 10.
It belongs in the top 10. I think it's a little bit higher.
It should be higher on the list for sure.
Yeah.
I love this movie so much. The way it doesn't take itself so seriously.
No. Which is funny because James Cameron takes himself way too seriously.
Very seriously.
Yes.
Very seriously.
But
you get some good comedic action. You get some good comedic efforts from, I say this reluctantly, but he's so good in the movie, Tom Arnold.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton.
Guy is a used car salesman.
This just keeps getting better and better. I'm sorry. We're going to
still
going to
kill him, but...
Yeah,
it's so great.
So I love this movie. It is
the husband's dickless. Face it. If they were taking care of business, I'd be out of business.
So many great one-liners in this movie.
Good stuff.
I married Rambo.
Yeah.
Jamie Lee Curtis hanging out of the limo
man.
at a high-speed chase.
Yeah.
Punching. What's her name? Gina Carano?
No. Gina.
Tia. Nope. Don't go that one.
I don't know. Well, yeah, right.
You know what? True Lies. Watch it. It's awesome.
True Lies, it is.
It
great.
definitely belongs higher on this list. Just like number 9 on this list, The Rock.
Oh yeah, The Rock.
So good.
Michael Bay,
really in his prime.
Yep.
Coming off Bad Boys.
Yep.
Nick Cage, Ed Harris, Sean Connery, a couple other like smaller actors, but also give
John C. McGinley, I think, is one of the terrorist guys in that one.
Who's he? I don't know him. Is he his right-hand man?
No, he's anyhow.
Anyway, great movie.
Yeah.
I always forget that this guy's in the movie, the guy from Terminator 1. He was just in The Mandalorian Season 2 and the Western Showdown.
Oh.
What was it? John Connor from Terminator 1. He was...
Oh, Michael Biehn.
Yeah, Michael Biehn.
Oh, yeah, Michael Bihn's great.
Yeah,
yes.
And he makes a dumb decision. I will not back down.
Right. Oh, Michael Biehn he is probably one of the best character actors out there. I mean, you think about his long lineage of great movies. Aliens, he played Hicks in Aliens, and then he also was Johnny Ringo in Tombstone, which is probably my all-time favorite movie.
Oh, yeah. I always forget he's
Johnny Ringo.
Yeah,
it's like someone just walked over your grave.
Great character actor.
Yep.
My favorite line from the movie is in the beginning when they get the shipment, the box, and they're in the containment area.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, "You want me to stick this in my heart?"
Are you crazy?
He's got this needle that's like a foot long.
Yeah.
So I love that movie. It's so good. It's Michael Bay in his prime before he went into Transformers hell. The
first one was not bad.
The first one was good.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of Michael Bay.
It is a different Michael Bay. Yeah.
So, okay, now we get to the ridiculousness of the list.
Okay.
I feel like lists are made just to create this kind of So at number 8, movie with a good action hero.
Yeah.
Or action actor.
Okay.
Because Jean-Claude Van Damme's no action.
No. He's not really an actor.
He's not really an actor or a hero. But
right.
Hard Target at number 8.
Okay.
I mean, maybe top 25.
Yeah. Okay. I put
Some
to the top 25, but certainly not top 10.
to the face
right.
in this movie. It takes place in
Louisiana. Yep. They a bunch of rich people hunt down homeless folks, and they try and get combat vets because they want
those
a better
bastards.
Sport. Yeah. It's a terrible movie.
It's
like
terrible.
The whole premise of the movie is a terrible thing, and it's just Jean-Claude Van Damme. So I mean, there's lots of kicking and there's lots of.
It's kind of at the end of his run.
Yes.
Of heroes.
Yeah. So I would probably put it in the top 25, but certainly not top 10 of the 90s. Though.
All right, number 7, a buddy cop flick. Can you guess? No.
Bad Boys?
No.
Okay. Nope.
I thought you were going to say a Lethal Weapon movie, but no. Also no. Do you understand the words coming out of my mouth?
Oh, Rush Hour. Yeah. Okay. All right.
And again,
okay.
I buddy cop, great buddy cop.
Yeah, it's
flick,
funny,
but not
good action.
Top 10.
Yeah, I definitely don't. I wouldn't put it in the top 10. Nope.
This one for sure doesn't belong in the top 10. Cliffhanger.
No, that was terrible. But John Lithgow's performance in that was really great as the villain. He was really
great.
Really good stuff. No, I that movie was not
the poster. I'm looking at the poster, and Stallone's arm is bigger than the rest of his body and face. So it's really an odd poster.
Funny story about that. I actually had I worked at the video store, back in the 90s, and I actually had a 6-foot tall poster of this movie that I got from the video store. That's and it was cool. I mean, it was super cool. I had it hanging on the wall behind my door. And it was really neat. But yeah, you could tell the arm was like way bigger than the.
I had it's a weird poster.
Yeah,
I had a life-size cutout of LaFonso Ellis, who was a Denver Nugget from the 1990s.
Oh sure. Mm-hmm.
Stupidly, I put him in my window, or in front of my window. So every other night I'd wake up and I'd feel like there's a 6'8" black man in my room, and it would scare the crap out of me. But I never moved it.
Yeah.
So funny story there. Okay. Yeah. Number 5, great action movie. Again, I don't know about in the top 5, but it is Arnold, so maybe that just gets him there. But
right.
Total Recall.
Okay. Yeah. Let me get your ass to Mars.
Now,
2 weeks.
So the top 4, this actually might be 100% accurate. Okay? Might be. Although, again, I don't see Bad Boys in the top 10.
Yeah, then it's not accurate.
Number 4, Speed.
Okay, I'm completely on board with that.
Big time.
This movie was amazing when it came out.
And it still is. And I throw it on when I'm doing the dishes or whatever, and it's still so good.
It was relentless.
It's relentless.
It was really...
I mean, the one scene with the bus jumping making the jump is about the only scene where you're like, which is funny because you got this bus just driving through LA at high speeds. But
well, yeah, for one thing, I think that's the most unbelievable part of the movie is that there's no traffic.
Yeah. At some point, there's no traffic.
Right.
The most underrated part of this movie, in my mind, the most underrated part is the score. The score is really good.
It's good, yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
Right.
It gets the blood flowing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
All right, number 3. I'm okay with this being at number 3. I'd probably put it number 2 or 1, but the man himself, John McClane, returning to save the day. Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Okay, yeah.
I'll never forget the trailer for this movie. Best tagline ever, or most accurate. And it said, on a good day, he's a great cop.
Yeah.
On a bad day, he's the best there is.
Yeah,
and
right.
he's like turning around, shooting out of the car at that exact moment.
Right.
And I'll never forget that. And he's hungover the whole movie. He's got a headache. And for one thing, I'm dealing with a headache.
Right.
I love this movie. We talked about maybe my goal to drop a Die Hard reference every show.
Yes.
But
We'll work.
John
towards it.
McTiernan returned to glory in this one. He directed the first Die Hard, and was he in jail for the second one? Is that when he was in jail, or did he go to jail after this one?
I think he went after.
Anyway, great action director.
Yeah.
Love it at number 3. Number 2.
Okay.
I'm going to take a guess. So number 1 and 2, I think, are very apt in their spots.
Well, I think I don't know who the number 2 is. I'm hoping that the number 1 is where I think it is, but
We'll take a guess.
I'm hoping number 1 is, or number 2 is. I'm hoping number 1 is Terminator 2.
Okay.
So.
So you think number 2 would be?
Number 2 would probably have to be The Matrix.
You are correct.
Okay, perfect.
So number 2, The Matrix. Number 1, T2, and honestly, that's.
Well, I mean, they
bookend.
They bookend the 90s.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So
1991 for T2, 1999 for The Matrix. Yep. And totally different types of action movies.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
And really, The Matrix really brought in a new era of action for the 2000s, which nobody really ever replicated, to include The Matrix itself.
Yeah, right.
But Keanu Reeves in The Matrix, such an incredible movie. I like what you always say about how it really got you thinking about, are we in a simulation?
Right, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the philosophy behind it is, how would you know if you were in a simulation? And there are a lot of really smart people, like Elon Musk is one who believes that we potentially could be in a simulation, that once a civilization advances past a certain point, that they would have enough computing power to simulate simulate an environment, and create something like that. So it's
crazy.
It's fun. I mean, it's cool.
I've never kind of had my mind blown more than that one day when I threw that rock and it hit like the smallest branch ever, and I was like, I bet I couldn't do that again for $1 billion. And then you went into your like, well, it's because the simulation doesn't allow it to happen again. And I was like, whoa, my mind is blown. Yeah. So great movie. And then T2 is just so many movies after T2, have taken their action from this movie. It's
right.
It's an incredible movie.
Again, James Cameron.
On every level. And yeah, James Cameron, is there even a joke in that movie? Like, barely. Maybe when they're on the phone and he's,
right.
On the payphone. I can't even remember it, but great movie, great action movie. Probably definitely just number 1.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, James Cameron, he's meticulous, and he's almost a Terminator himself in how relentless he is at perfecting what he's doing. Yeah. So that's why you get, for the most part, great stuff that he creates. True Lies, obviously a little bit different tone on that one to some of his other stuff, but
it's called Ice, and it gets a little
slick. Yeah. So
is it slick or slippery?
I think it's maybe slippery. I don't know, but anyhow,
just cover the goddamn files.
But yeah, so I mean, Terminator 2 was, you up to that point, special effects wise, The Abyss kind of showed a little bit. Again, Michael Biehn, and Ed Harris.
Yep.
They had the water in The Abyss that kind of looked like it, and then they took that technology and they made that into the T-1000.
Yep.
And I can remember an interview with Cameron about Robert Patrick, whose brother actually is in the band Filter. I don't know if you knew that, but a little piece of trivia for you. Yep.
That is some deep cut stuff right there.
So, but yeah, so
I'm
Robert
cutting you off after that one.
Robert Patrick, that he had this like cat like look to him, and so for him when he saw Robert, he was like, oh, he has like this cat like predator look to him, and so casting him and to have him opposite of Arnold, where you have the T-800 be this gigantic tank type human being. And then you have this more thin, character. It was a great play off of, and they've never been able to replicate that with the Terminator world. Which my Uncle Frank and I have had this discussion many times, that really the next level in this, and we kind of did it with Christian Bale's Terminator, but they didn't really.
The Machine War. We should get to the. That's
what
we
should have seen as the Machine War. So.
And that would have been really cool.
Yeah.
But it goes back to you got to have a certain face to movies, and you can't just have robots fighting each other. So I understand why they didn't do it, but also just do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the list, dude. I agree with the top 4 100%.
Yes.
The rest of it can be done differently. What I think we should do is let's create our own top 10 action movies of the 90s, and we'll post it on Twitter, and
sure.
We can get you guys' reaction to our list, and maybe you guys create your own list of top 10 because it's a fun conversation to have.
Yeah, I think there's a couple that I can think of, Point Break and Bad Boys, that should be in that top 10 that aren't.
Yeah, you could take Hard Target out and
for sure.
easily replace it with Bad Boys.
Yeah.
Which has I love the intro of Bad Boys.
It's so great.
The way the music starts before when it's doing the Columbia Pictures, and it's just like dun 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 dun. Or that was the Speed one.
No, you're right. Dun 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 dun.
Yeah, there it is. I missed the dun 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 dun.
Yep.
Anyway,
it's good stuff.
And
then they
I'm
have
not
that
musically
the
sound.
Miami sign and the 747 go over top of it. Yeah,
it's
great stuff.
And
Michael Bay's camera work, his camera work, because he does a lot of his. I mean, he has a cinematographer, but he does a lot of his own camera stuff. Like he's super meticulous about how he wants it. He created that underneath shot of your hero, that underneath standing up, and that slow motion pan. And the first time I saw that in Bad Boys with with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, it was like, oh, dude, that's awesome. So
I think there's an honest trailer out there. It's either a full-on, like, they just talk about Michael Bay movies, or just in every Michael Bay honest trailer, they talk about it. It's really funny.
Yeah.
All right. Good list. Should we get to fan questions?
Let's do it.
Our first fan question comes from fan of the show, buddy of the show, good old Tim Edwards, sent in a question saying, could a lightsaber cut through Captain America's shield? And when I first read this, I was like, well, hell no. And then I'm like, start thinking about it.
Yeah.
And yes, over time, a lightsaber will cut through anything.
Yes. Yeah, I think I tend to agree. So to answer the question, no, don't think a lightsaber could cut through.
Yeah. So real quick, Cap's shield's made of vibranium.
Yes.
It's the hardest metal on Earth.
Right.
In the MCU.
Right.
There's adamantium in the comics as well, which Cap's shield is actually made of proto-adamantium, not vibranium. But as we saw in Avengers Endgame, there's stronger metals out there as Thanos' sword breaks through Cap's shield.
Yeah.
So if Thanos can cut through Cap's shield, I think a lightsaber could easily melt
through. Yes. So
Good question.
Good question. Though.
Very nerdy.
That's
question.
Very nerdy, and I love it, Tim.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that I enjoy having a quick thought about. You know, and I have to really think about it.
Well, yeah, exactly. When he first said, I was like, no, yeah,
right.
So, good question.
Yep, good question.
Next question comes from another good buddy of the show. He's trying to get himself on the show. I like it. Morgan Santo with a great question. Do you think John Bernthal should have been a different Marvel character? Hear me out with this one. John Hamm as Punisher and Bernthal as Wolverine. What do you think? So, a couple things on this. John Bernthal's Punisher is perfect in my mind. Can't bring him over to be Wolverine instead of the Punisher. If you're going to bring him into the MCU, make sure he's just bringing over the Punisher. He's a little tall in my mind for Wolverine. I'm a purist when it comes to Wolverine. I really want him to be that 5'5" beast that he is in the comics.
So Tom Holland.
I'd love that.
Well, the kid's too nice. He's just too nice.
He's so sweet. He's so sweet. So he Bernthal could like tap into that rage Wolverine has, that berserker mentality.
Right.
But my answers on that is please don't. And then John Hamm as Punisher's a little old. John Hamm has been fan casted as Bruce Wayne and Batman and an old Superman. Again, I just don't see the physicality from John Hamm to be the Punisher. I'd like to see him brought into the MCU at some point. He was fantastic in The Town.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I tend to agree. John Hamm I could see as Bruce Wayne, Batman in the Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
Where he's an older, grizzled, and he's a little bit slower and just not what he was. So I could see John Hamm as that.
Great Bruce Wayne, I think.
I think so too.
Even like a really good, an older Bruce Wayne.
Yeah. So I tend to agree with you. I don't see him as the kind of the action star there that he used to, and I really find it difficult to think of him as anything other than the guy from Bridesmaids.
He's. I don't know how to tell you this.
I don't know how to tell you. I really just want you to leave. So, it's just hard to see. I mean, I know he played on Mad Men and all that stuff, and he's got,
he's a good actor. He's got range. He could probably do it.
Yeah.
Do something in the superhero realm. We'll see.
Yeah, and then Bernthal. Yeah, sure, Bernthal is Wolverine. I could see it maybe, but his role, his performance as Frank Castle has just been really great. So I think he was a great casting on that one. So
great casting.
Yeah, but great question, Morgan. Thanks for.
And it brings up the little rumor that was brought over.
Yeah.
Yep. You're the one who told me about this.
Yep. So John Bernthal's Punisher is rumored to be cast in one of the upcoming Spider-Man movies. Don't think it's going to be the one that they're filming or working through production
Spider-Man
on right now.
Home.
Yep. So,
it's already crowded enough.
Right, but it's rumored that Punisher will fight Tom Holland's Spider-Man in an upcoming film, and which is cool because the Punisher. That's how that character was created, was through the Amazing Spider-Man number 129. Was they had accused Spider-Man, I think, of murder or something like that, and so the Punisher came for him, and because he felt like he was outside of the normal justice system,
And when the Punisher comes,
Punisher comes for you, you're
in trouble.
You're in trouble. So, yep.
Great question, Morgan. Keep them coming, buddy.
Yep.
Next question comes from a fellow YouTuber.
Yes.
So check her channel out. She's got a very young YouTube channel. It's an educational type YouTube channel where she talks about the misconceptions on certain women in history, and it's really good. She edits her own videos.
Oh,
does
cool!
A fantastic job. She's very funny. Dylan Marie.
Okay.
Sends in this question. You spoke briefly about the heroes of the nerd world, but what villains are your favorite? DC, Marvel, sci-fi? She says this can include characters who can be both villain and hero, which many are or become. Would love to hear your thoughts on a future podcast, as in this one. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So this is actually interesting because when I read it initially, I didn't see the sci-fi etc. portion. I just was thinking DC Marvel stuff.
Sure.
So
I think I know where you're going.
Do you?
Every podcast, you got to get it in.
I got to get it in. So I think initially my initial thought was my favorite villain of all the comic book stuff is the Green Goblin. Like, I've always just really liked that character.
Norman Osborn really is a great villain.
The sinister costume, the glider thing that he flies on and stuff. I just always thought that was a super cool villain. To me, he's the quintessential.
Well, and his
villain.
alter ego Norman Osborn makes him an even better villain because he's a power figure. I think he even becomes president of the United States in the comics.
Yeah,
I mean he's a formidable foe.
Right.
Both in Norman Osborn, or as Norman Osborn, and then as Green Goblin as well.
Right, and so Sony and Disney just signed a deal recently to bring a lot of those characters, the Spider-Man characters, including Norman Osborn, into the MCU. So I think
awesome.
we will
he's
see.
He's supposed to be a big part of the future moving forward, so I'm excited for that.
So I think we'll see him.
Spidey is the greatest hero of all time. That's debatable, obviously, because there's a lot of great heroes. But he's the most recognizable. He's the most relatable. So to have his main villain as your main villain,
yes,
it's a great choice.
Yeah, I think for me. From a comic book perspective, that's one of my favorites. But from this, when she popped in the sci-fi thing, I had to think about it later, and I went home. And so, for all of my Star Trek fans and friends of Star Trek, Khan is my amazing. It is just an amazing villain. Like he's in that Star Trek universe,
And you're talking about the original Khan from the 1970s.
Yeah, I am. I
Not
Benedict
the
Cumberbatch. I actually enjoyed the retelling of that story. It's not my favorite. There were a lot of mistakes. There were a lot of things. Bit of trivia for me. I actually watched that movie the day I got married. It premiered. And I got
Getting
married.
pumped up.
So my wife was like, you can't be anywhere around where we're going to be. And I thought, well, the last place my wife is going to be on her wedding day is going to see a Star Trek movie. So it just makes sense. It just made sense to me. So
you're like, what are you doing here?
Right. Yeah. Why are you here? This is weird. So I think I know. And I hope you're going to say who I think you're going to say, but so that's villains of all time. So go.
Who do you think I was going to say?
I think his name rhymes with Garth Chater.
I actually had to think about that for 1 second. Yeah, I mean Darth Vader is the greatest villain of all time,
yep.
and you don't ever see his face, which makes it even more menacing.
Right.
You don't know what's under there. Of course, we see what's under the hood in the prequels when we find out his backstory, which is just a whiny bitch, basically. And, but Darth Vader's the all-time greatest villain, in my own humble opinion. My favorite villain, though, I've had some time to think about this. For the movies, Thanos was a great villain in Infinity War.
Yeah.
He was, and any great villain is going to think they're the hero of their own story. So
right.
Thanos thought he was saving the universe by
getting
rid of half of everything, and
in his own sick, twisted way, you can see what he's trying to achieve.
Yeah, and it any great villain you can empathize with.
Yeah.
So you can empathize with Thanos in that, especially.
Except for Hans Gruber, another great villain.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like I've had some time to think about this, and I was like, Hans Gruber is such a great villain.
Yeah.
He belongs up there in the movies. In the comics, I've always been very biased to the more personal villains to my favorite heroes. So for Cap, I've always loved Red Skull and Zemo. For Cyclops, I've always loved Mr. Sinister because Cyclops is the Summers family is the only people who can hurt Mr. Sinister. I've always loved Spidey has the greatest rogues gallery of any hero ever.
Right.
Only really Batman can say that he has as many rogues as Spidey does, but you look at Spidey's rogue, just the Sinister Six alone with you got guys like Doc Ock and I just totally drew a blank. Sandman, Vulture, Electro, Shocker, Kingpin, all these great villains for Spidey.
Right.
So that's awesome. But it does always go back to Vader as the greatest villain.
Sure. Yep. So just another YouTuber that I watch from time to time is this guy NerdWriter1, and he does a video that's about 6.5 minutes long, and I highly recommend that you watch it. But he does really good in-depth critiques of movies and things of that nature. And so he has one that's specifically called, and you should search for it after you search for Dylan Marie's YouTube page and you subscribe and like her stuff.
Yeah, good call.
You need to look up NerdWriter1 and look up one called Darth Vader, an icon in 34 minutes.
Yeah,
because that's in 34 minutes in the original 34 minutes of the original
video
trilogy.
Isn't 34 minutes?
No, it is not.
Like
it's only 6.5 minutes.
Yeah.
But he breaks down that Darth Vader was only in 34 minutes of the original trilogy.
Yeah, and
you think of how iconic he was in those 34 minutes is amazing.
It's incredible.
It really is.
Incredible.
Really is. So
really getting the most out of your time.
Absolutely. Frugal.
Last question comes from number one fan of the show.
The number one fan of the show.
Pretty much established this week as
the best.
The number one fan of the show.
Yeah.
My mom, love her so much. I always make the joke that my wife married me for my mom.
Right.
Denise Stemple sends in an awesome question. I'm not just saying that because I love my mom so much. But what was a movie that left you so baffled / in awe that you could talk about it forever? Or a superhero movie that was so far off from the comic original story that it was funny or annoying or something like that? So this is a great question. And I have 2 movies off the top of my head that just come to mind immediately.
Yeah.
I've walked out of the movie theater really only mad a couple times in my life, and it's these 2 movies. So X-Men 3, The Last Stand, was a terrible movie. It was so bad. It took 2 of the greatest X-Men storylines from the comics and jumbled them together in this movie, the Cure storyline and the Phoenix Force storyline. And honestly, you can't tell the Phoenix storyline in a 2-hour movie, let alone barely a 3-episode TV show arc in the in the cartoon in the 90s. They did it right. I think it was actually more like 6 or 8 episodes in the cartoon, and that was the best adaptation of that storyline, which is a top 3 comic storyline in my mind. Anyway.
Yep.
Terrible movie. They killed off Cyclops in the first 10 minutes. They made Wolverine. Just I can't even. I get mad talking about this, so I'm just gonna say X-Men: The Last Stand, X-Men 3: The Last Stand, terrible movie, and then Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. It's starting to really get anger shakes over here. So, again, the term expectation management really comes to play in this, and I didn't manage my expectations correctly, so this may be on me. But also it's a lot on Rian Johnson for being a D-bag, so I blame him. I hate this movie a lot more than a lot of people I know.
Sure.
A lot of people didn't mind it, but I wanted to see hero Luke Skywalker, and maybe this is why the end of Mandalorian Season 2 was so good for me.
So good, yes. Yep.
I wanted to see
redemption. You get to see what a badass.
To briefly bring it back to the last question about Darth Vader being the greatest villain, in my mind, Luke Skywalker is the greatest hero of all time, across all mediums, not just in the MCU or comics or anything like that. So to see Luke Skywalker, who in my mind was the greatest hero of all time, become this angry Uncle Buck crap guy.
Well, he goes from being the whiny kid, to this to the pinnacle of Return of the Jedi. Is he's a hero? Like, he's done an amazing stuff.
Saved the galaxy multiple times.
Right, and then now when you pick him up in this next series, he's back to being a whiny teenage boy. Except when you're an old man and you're whiny, you just sound bitter and tragic, and it's just.
And for what reason?
Yeah, and for what? Yeah,
that's the biggest question.
Right, because Ben, I don't know, Ben Solo. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just the sequel trilogy is just a mess, and the Last Jedi is the pinnacle of that mess.
I just struggle with Rian Johnson a lot because of how good Looper was and how amazing Knives Out was,
and how
it makes me think that I don't think a lot of the stuff that he's taken it for the team, because I think the decisions around the Star Wars trilogy there were pretty bad, from even the picture that he didn't do, which is the original, the J.J. Abrams one.
You've talked about it. There's not a strategic plan in place. They just went from kind of picture to picture, and it's a mess. The casino scene in The Last Jedi served zero purpose.
Yeah, it was a waste of those actors' time.
No purpose. Yeah. And so there's just so much, and he's like trying to subvert expectations, and it's what D&D did for season 8 of Game of Thrones. Sometimes you're like, what, just give the fans what they freaking want,
right?
And it'll turn out to be $1 billion masterpiece, believe me.
Yeah, and then you can go make your boutique art picture or whatever.
Don't mess with my Star Wars. So
no, I think those are good. Just definitely ones that kind of baffled everybody. For me, it was Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. it's just a train wreck from the very beginning all the way through. Like like the opening scene, you have the bit where the kids are racing in the cars against those Russian dudes. But when they get to the airport, it's blatantly a movie set. I mean, blatantly a movie set. You look at it and you're like, oh my God, literally that car looks like a cutout of what a car would be. I mean, and
the stand-up cutout.
It was terrible.
Like LaFonso Ellis.
Yeah, right. Yes.
They had my LaFonso Ellis stand out.
Yeah, it just was terrible. So the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and then it just got worse. It just the refrigerator.
And it becomes an alien.
Yeah,
movie.
the monkeys, the aliens. I mean, everything about it was just like, this is what happens. This is what happens when nobody tells anybody no. This is. There's no guy standing in the corner and go, you're all batshit crazy, and you need to stop this right now. Like,
it's just a bunch of genius people sitting around, like, how about this?
Yeah,
sounds great. How about this?
It's a great idea. Great idea, Steven.
Yeah.
It's like, George's like, hey, I think we should put him in a fridge.
Yeah,
that's a brilliant idea, George. Let's put him in a fridge.
Like, let's bring in aliens.
Yeah, and so Harrison goes, hey, could we do some monkeys? Search. I don't know if that was his suggestion. I doubt it, but Harrison was probably just like, whatever. I'm just here to get paid.
Just give me a paycheck.
Yep. So, and then finally, the last one that I could infinitely talk about is probably one I discussed earlier in The Matrix. There's a lot of great stuff that you could talk about from the philosophical perspective of the simulation theory, and then also the special effects, Lawrence Fishburne's performance, Carrie-Anne Moss's performance. The entire
Everything.
scope of it, and
action,
and then the kung fu, the kung fu stuff. Cinematography.
I had some trouble with that in the last few weeks. Cinematography. The score.
The score is amazing.
So
in that
good.
One. Yes.
I mean, everything is so good. The steak that Joe Pantaleone eats looks like the greatest steak of all time. It makes my mouth water when he eats it. So, love that. Love those answers. Definitely baffled by Indy 4. Just have him find an artifact that belongs in a museum.
Right.
So.
Good stuff.
Great. Well, that'll do it for episode 4, A New Hope for podcast. When we become big and famous in 10 days, we'll look back at this episode.
Longing.
And say, episode 4, New Hope for podcast. We brought it. So want to thank everybody who tunes in and listens. You guys, obviously we can't do this without you. The feedback we've gotten has been incredible, both good and bad, except for, I'm still not going to go ahead and say The Hobbit's not a great movie.
Right.
Though
Jen Tiedemann.
Shout out to Jen
Tiedemann.
Jen Tiedemann. Really standing up to us on The Hobbit. I like it. She's standing her ground.
Yep, she's holding my feet to the fire.
But that's what nerds do. We stand our ground when we believe in something. So good for you, Jen Tiedemann.
Yep, Jen, we appreciate keeping us honest, keeping us real, and really challenging us on our opinions and whether or not they hold up. So between you and your son Evan, thanks, Jen, for giving us a hard time. So,
yes.
And keep it coming. Like, if you've got critiques about our opinions, tell us.
Let us know.
We're willing to.
Sparks good debate.
Yeah, we love it.
We're not too proud.
Yep.
All right. As always, Eric Hare, I appreciate you, buddy. Thank you for being with me today. And we'll see you next week on episode 5. I don't have a title yet. We'll think about it.
We'll work on it.
We'll work on it.
Yep.
It's going to be,
The
Empire Strikes Back. We'll figure it out.
Figure out something.
Stay tuned. Okay, people. Bye.
Bye.